All right, I'm going to call to order the regular council meeting here on Monday, May 16th at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. We are obviously attending in person, which is great, but we're also streaming through Facebook and through Zoom, and our good friends CHCO-TV are here as well. So first of all, I'll get into the recording of attendance. I note that all members of council are in attendance. I see Councillor Heenan is joining us virtually, so thank you very much, Councillor Heenan, for doing so. And to start, I want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskotu-Mogadi people, and I'll be looking for a mover to approve the agenda as, a mover, there we go, Councillor Blanchard, a seconder, got Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion, I just actually was wondering, Council, there was a late email that came in. I was wondering if we'd be all right with calling it a friendly amendment to move, I guess it's 6-2. Which is the PED 220506. I think that there is a need to go to closed session before discussing that one in light of an email that came through this afternoon. So if everyone would entertain that as a friendly amendment, anyone concerned over that? Seeing none, so we'll call that a friendly amendment. So at this point, unless there's any other discussion, I'll call for the motion. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. And that is everybody, so the agenda has been approved. Disclosure of conflict of interest, does anyone have any this evening? Seeing none. So at this point, we are jumping into the presentations for this evening, and I see we have a special guest. But Diane Hall is also joining Jackson Levitt for a presentation and proclamation on Easter Seals Red Shirt Day, which is June 1st of 2022. So the floor is yours.
Julia Latham's going to be.
Oh, perfect.
That's all right.
Yep, we'll get you to come up to the mic just so it gets caught for Councillor Heenan.
Okay. Do you mind if I take some pictures?
Take as many as you'd like. This is my better side.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having us here. We're pretty excited to share Red Shirt Day with you. I'm the director of Easter Seals New Brunswick, and this year we're celebrating our 100th anniversary in New Brunswick, but it's all across Canada. And we have good company. We're Canadian Tire's 100 years and Jaguar's 100 years. So I guess we're all getting up there. One of our annual events is held on June 1st, and it's called Red Shirt Day. Red Shirt Day is a national day of action for accessibility and inclusion, a day when people all across Canada come together and wear red in schools, workplaces, communities, to create awareness with the display of solidarity. We thank you for declaring June 1st, St. Andrew's Red Shirt Day. And in case you haven't missed seeing Jackson, he was zooming around his bicycle in St. Andrew's. I'd like to introduce him now because Jackson is not only the ambassador of Easter Seals New Brunswick, but he is the ambassador for Red Shirt Day across Canada. And will be seen by all Easter Seals. Diana, which shirt? Okay. So Jackson would like to present the mayor with a red shirt to wear on Red Shirt Day. Yeah. It's perfect. Everything's red and white. No. Yeah. So on Red Shirt Day, Jackson and all his schoolmates are going to have a red shirt, courtesy of Easter Seals, and we're going to be walking with them. So we'll see you on June 1st, I hope.
Thank you very much for the shirt, Jackson. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you for presenting. We will go a little out of order. The package available, but right after the agenda, there's the motion related to this particular presentation, I thought it'd be good that we take care of it right now.
Certainly, Your Worship, I'd be happy to. Under the Rec and Community Services Committee, myself being the chair, the reference number is RCS 220506, and the date is the 10th of May, 2022, submitted by myself, and the subject is Diane Hall and Jackson Levitt presentation and proclamation on Easter Seals Red Shirt Day, June 1st, 2022. And the background reads, Council has been provided a presentation from Diane Hall and Jackson Levitt on the Easter Seals Red Shirt Day, June 1st, 2022. It is recommended that Council proclaim June 1st as St. Andrew's Red Shirt Day for 2022. And the motion reads that Council proclaims June 1st, 2022 as St. Andrew's Red Shirt Day for Easter Seals in New Brunswick.
Thank you very much, Councilor Gubichel. A seconder for that motion. Deputy Mayor Akaji, any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody, so I'm happy to see that pass. So first, this is the Town of St. Andrews resolution on the Easter Seals Red Shirt Day, whereas 2022 marks the 100th anniversary of Easter Seals supporting the quality of life for children and adults with disabilities. Whereas June 1st marks Red Shirt Day in Canada, a day of action for accessibility and inclusion. Whereas Easter Seals New Brunswick and the Town of St. Andrews recognize that wearing red on June 1st encourages a commitment to inform and educate ourselves on issues related to disabilities and to try to remove barriers in our schools, workplaces, and communities, ensuring full participation for all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town of St. Andrews hereby proclaims June 1st, 2022 as the Town of St. Andrews Red Shirt Day. Now, therefore, I, Brad Henderson, Mayor of the Town of St. Andrews, support the proclamation of the Town of St. Andrews Red Shirt Day of June 1st, 2022, which will be signed here on May 16th, 2022. In the witness whereof, I have set my hand and caused the seal of mayoralty for the Town of St. Andrews to be affixed here too. So I have a copy of it right here, Jackson, and I'll happily sign that proclamation and the copy for you. And I just wanted to say how proud the town is actually to have you as an ambassador, not just for St. Andrews, not just for the province, but for Red Shirt Day across Canada. I can't think of a better ambassador, and we're so lucky to have you part of our community. So thanks for coming in here today. All right, so we'll move to hard act to follow. But we do have Caroline Walker and Peggy Hogarth that are doing a presentation on By the Sea Butterflies Garden Project, which we're excited for. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, councillors. We're looking at a PowerPoint presentation about butterfly ways. The David Suzuki Foundation has established the Butterfly Way project. It's a volunteer-driven campaign that aims to create networks of butterfly-friendly habitat in communities throughout Canada. This is the sign that you will see on gardens that are part of our group. The St. Andrews by the Sea Butterfly Way is a volunteer group established this year, and our goal in 2022 is to encourage safe habitats for wild pollinators to restore the health of our ecosystem, to create a butterfly way, which is a network of 12+ gardens of native plants, shrubs, and trees in our community, to raise awareness among citizens and the community, and to inspire change. Next picture up, I believe, is a before and after photograph of, we're still waiting for the images, but
My apologies, for some reason it's not coming up here, but it is streaming to Facebook, so.
we'll continue. Okay. What you might be looking at is a before and after photo of a butterfly way, a garden way that after it's been loved by butterfly way gardeners, native plants, trees, and shrubs have been added. Wild pollinators are vital. They include butterflies, moths, wild bees, other insects, and hummingbirds. They are essential for the health of the ecosystem. Butterflies play an important role pollinating flowers, especially red or yellow ones with a strong scent, and that have a large amount of nectar, an important part of the butterfly diet. For example, cardinal flowers, coneflowers, milkweed, columbine. Wild bees are key pollinators with over 800 species. Research has shown that the presence of wild bees increases yields of many crops. Hummingbirds are the primary birds to play a role in pollination in North America. Insects are food for hummingbirds, as well as fruit trees, fruit flies, native plants such as milkweed, columbine, hyssop, and many others. You may not be aware, but insects are in decline worldwide. As the foundation of our ecosystem, insects have declined by more than 40% in our lifetime. This is in North America and in Western Europe. 1 in 4 insect species is in danger. The rusty patch bumblebee, formerly one of the most common in North America, is now on the brink of extinction. Habitat loss through clear-cutting, pesticide use, monoculture, and urban development contribute to the decline in insect numbers. Climate change, light pollution, and introduced or invasive species, for example, the emerald ash borer, the Asian longhorn beetle, etc., cause further decline. New Brunswick butterflies include the swallowtail and the scudder. The Canadian tiger swallowtail feeds on the nectar of goldenrod, daisies, clover, lilac, sweetgrass, tufted vetch, etc. Pink-edged sulfur butterfly, or the scudder, feed on nectar of orange hawkweed and bristly sarsaparilla. Butterflies and moths need a place to land on the flowers they visit, so they prefer broad, flat-leafed flowers, for example, daisies. Since they have long, straw-like mouth parts, they can suck nectar from deep within the flower. Research has shown that our gardens can be a vital refuge for many insect species. Urban areas are growing across Canada and North America. Improving their value for pollinators is critical for any strategy to protect and increase pollinators. Since 2017, the David Suzuki Foundation has helped establish more than 75 butterfly ways in communities across Canada, with more than 6,500 new urban gardens. Insects are amazing, and the work they do helps all of us. For example, you might not be aware that monarch butterflies migrate thousands of kilometers. The silk moth produces silk fiber. The dung beetle contributes to decomposition in soil. The cochineal scale insect is used for dye production. The fruit fly is essential in science research. And the alfalfa looper moth contributes to vaccine development, including the coronavirus vaccine. We have a modest goal, the 4 Butterfly Way Rangers that represent St. Andrews, Peggy Hogarth, Sue Rangeley, and Helen Stevenson and myself, to find creative ways to establish at least a dozen new garden areas filled with native plants, in other words, a local butterfly way. In 2022, the Year of the Garden, join us to support pollinators and help create a butterfly way in St. Andrews and surroundings. And it doesn't have to be a garden. It can be a pot of native plants. It can be a hanging basket. It can be a window garden. Be a host. Some of the native New Brunswick plants, shrubs, and trees for pollinators include aster, goldenrod, black-eyed Susan, milkweed, blue vervain. For woodland gardens, you might find violet, trillium, bloodroot, hepatica, American trout lily. In wetlands, Joe Pye weed, blue flag iris, pickerel weed, marsh marigold, white water lilies. Many of these are already in existence in our gardens and the byways and shrublands. Native shrubs include serviceberry, chokeberry, dogwood, currant, red elderberry, meadowsweet. Native trees include mountain maple, striped maple, willow, staghorn sumac, mountain ash, hawthorn, birch, etc., etc. So what can you do? You can help us increase awareness of the importance of native pollinators, including butterflies and wild bees. You can foster growth of pollinator habitat, gardens, and spaces within the town. You can contribute to a healthy and sustainable planet. The image you're missing now is a butterfly way parking only. We would like to thank you very much and encourage you to check out Facebook and our Butterfly Ways website. Both of those are on the PowerPoint presentation. Finally, thank you very much for allowing us to present to you today. You might notice on our Facebook and website pages more information about the project. We'll also be presenting at the June plant sale that the By the Sea garden group, planters group, has June 4th. It'll be at the United Church, and we'll have native plants and more for sale, as well as more information about pollinators. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before we let you go, I was wondering if council had any questions on everything. It certainly was good from an awareness standpoint for both council and the public, but did anyone have any questions?
Good question. I believe it starts at 10. We're setting up at 8, but I believe it starts at 10 a.m. There'll be information on the By the Sea Garden Club Facebook.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation. I know that you've been busy today dropping signs off, which I was fortunate enough to
Yes.
get one for Kingsbury.
You might
but
see some of these signs at our honorable mention garden, the Butterfly Garden at Kingsbury Gardens.
Yep.
And these are the signs. You might also see them around town. People already have established gardens. We're very close to achieving our minimum goal of 12 native gardens. And we're looking for anybody else to join us.
Perfect. Well, thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Really appreciate the time this evening. All right, council. So that gets us through the presentations for this evening. Great to always have a couple of those. So thanks to everyone who presented. So we don't have to worry about minutes. We do that at the previous one of our bi-monthly meetings. No communications in the staff report we did last meeting. So we're jumping right into the introduction, consideration, passing of bylaws and motions. And at this point, I will pass it over to Deputy Mayor Akaji for Finance and Administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. FA 220507, appointment of the Charlotte County Hospital Foundation Incorporated Board of Trustee member. And the background is this. The town of St. Andrews received a letter from the Charlotte County Hospital Foundation Incorporated regarding the upcoming vacant position from St. Andrews on their Board of Trustees. Councillor Lee Heenan has indicated that he will not be continuing on the board due to his time constraints. The seat available is for a 3-year term position. The member selected has to be appointed by the council of the town of St. Andrews. The foundation is asking for an appointed member to their board no later than May 30th, 2022, and this is the date set for their AGM. The action and the motion is that council appoints Glenn Harris to the Charlotte County Hospital Foundation Incorporated to serve on the Board of Trustees for a 3-year term from 2022 to 2025 on behalf of the town of St. Andrews. And I so move this, but before I do that, I'd like to thank Councillor Heenan for his work on the board. He's represented St. Andrews for his term, and we'd like to thank you for your very conscientious work. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Akaji. A seconder for that motion. I've got Councillor Heenan, just because I saw it on the screen first. Councillor Neal, see that? Any other discussion on this motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is everybody, so that has been carried. Thank you again to Deputy Mayor Akaji's points. Thank you, Councillor Heenan, for your service for the community. And also thank you to Glenn Harris for stepping up and signing up to represent St. Andrews as the Charlotte County Hospital. Obviously is a very important asset for the region. I would hate to see this region without such an asset. So thank you, Glenn Harris. At this point, we are jumping over to Public Works. But before we get into a motion with Councillor Blanchard, there is a water meter program update, which is in page 16 of your council report. Mr. Spear, I don't know if you wanted to comment briefly on it. Probably be the best way to go about this.
Yeah, I think so, Your Worship, just to make sure council's up to date on this. But as you're aware, a couple of 3 years ago, we switched from consumption-based metering for all residents to flat-based for most residents, plus going to commercial, or for volume users, it was still on a metered basis. But for a lot of reasons, including the fact that it encourages conservation, plus for a fairness thing, we decided we should go back to a metered program for all the residents. And so in last year's budget and this year's budget, you set aside $50,000 a year in order to do that. There's two big things you have to do. There's about 160 meters that have to be replaced right away. But we're also going to buy special wands that are plugged into the each of the meters that'll take the data from the household back to the town office, uploaded to a computer. So there's a lot of writing going on in the old way. Everything was written by hand, and which, as you can imagine, led to a lot of errors because there's about 960 meters in town. And so we're going through that process this year. We've already let some of our residents know that the public works, actually the utility staff are going to be going and looking at their meters and making sure they're up to date, the 160 that we have concerns with. And then this fall, they're going to go back and hit every meter and do a baseline reading so that in the in the spring of 2023, we'll be back to full consumption reading is what the plan is right now. All the meters are purchased. We're having a demo on a couple of different wands and software just to make sure it's in place. But staff have already started going home to home for those ones that we have concerns to replace the meters and make a note of it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Spear, for that update. I don't think we have much to discuss because I think we all would probably agree that pay for what you use is what we should be encouraging, and it's a more fair way for our citizens to pay their water bills and obviously conservation, all that stuff. So that's a really wonderful news. I know it was a big expense for the municipality, but it's the right thing to do. So does anyone else have anything to add on that? But I appreciate the update. All right, so let's go on to the next motion. So I'll pass it over to you, Councillor Blanchard.
Thank you, Your Worship. So reference number PW 220509, dates May the 9th, 2022. Subject was acceptance of Eastern Charlotte Waterways climate change in the Shamcook watershed, updated predictions and their implications. So the background on that, excuse me, the town of St. Andrews received a presentation at the May 2nd, 2022 regular council meeting from Lee Penny of Eastern Charlotte Waterways for the climate change in the Shamcook watershed, updated predictions and their implications from an Environmental Trust Fund grant from 2021-2022. The presentation highlighted background information on the project, description of the watershed, updates on climate projections, review of existing data, and predicted changes including flow dynamics, cyanobacteria blooms, I think, and not booms, natural, animal, and man-made issues, intensity, duration, frequency curves, and drone footage, and then also the implications. So with the completion of the study and ongoing works with the Department of the Environment for the province of New Brunswick, Council should accept the report as presented. And the motion is that Council accepts the report from Eastern Charlotte Waterways for the climate change in the Shamcook watershed, update predictions and their implications report funded by the Environmental Trust Fund grant 2021-2022 from the province of New Brunswick, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Seconder for that motion. Got Councillor Neal, and discussion on that one. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody, so that has been approved. Thank you to Eastern Charlotte Waterways for their work on that particular presentation and, of course, report to go along with it. So at this point, we're jumping off that. We're now skipping right ahead to business, tourism, heritage, and culture, and it will be Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't actually have a motion in the package. I think this goes to Mr. Spear.
Yeah, correct. I thought it would be a motion, but you're right. It's just an update on the report.
Thank you, Worship. I was just to follow up, I guess, with council. So we've had a request from Jeff Holmes with the with Civic Trust and the Charlotte County Archives, requesting that janitorial services be provided to the courthouse this year. This was not a budgeted item. So we're just looking for direction from council. Primarily right now, from a municipal organization standpoint, we don't have any internal use for it, meaning council has elected not to meet there anymore, and staff uses the space or the arena space upstairs to meet. So it's just outside organizations that are using it. But having said that, they'll be running it for tours during the summer that they do, and I think either through volunteers and or maybe some summer staff that are brought in through grants. So in looking at past costs, it'd be approximately $75 a week to have it cleaned over probably about 17 weeks. So we're talking $1,300 plus probably a couple of $100 for, we'll call it a deep cleaning, because it hasn't been, really cleaned since this time last year. So I've talked about some other in-kind services we're already providing to the archives and things. So I guess the question is, did you want us to authorize the use of this cleaning for this year, or ask them that if they're going to be the ones using it, that they should be, it's still rent-free and everything, but if they're going to be using the facility, that they should provide the janitorial?
Council, over to you. It's an unbudgeted item. Staff report is attached. I believe they're recommending that the actual, I guess you could say the ones that are providing the tours of the archives, that's safe to say. The archives provides the cleaning as they require it. But over to you, whatever council consensus is, I'm fine with. Do you want the town to pay for it, or would you like town staff to work with them where they figure out their own internal solution, since as a town we're not really using it? I think it, again, comes back to a discussion that hopefully we're having soon, is what is the long-term plan for that courthouse? Like, we were looking at budget time and we said that we weren't going to do certain projects because we didn't know what it was going to be. This is almost feels a little bit on a more minor level like a same conversation. But with that being said, if it is open to the public, it is a representation of the town. You may want it clean in a way that you want it. So council, I'll look for some direction from any member if they have an opinion on this particular staff report. Councillor Earl.
Hey, thank you. Just a question, Your Worship. If we know, was the courthouse and jail awarded seed student for the summertime? Was it one or two? Do we know if they've got 2 employees?
I don't, from what I understand, and maybe the deputy mayor knows because of her connections, no. So from my understanding, I thought they had a part-time manager there. However, that's right. And I don't know, the Canada Summer Jobs, to the best of my knowledge, haven't been awarded yet. Okay. And I don't know if they got seed applicants. I could follow up with them or find out for sure.
I don't want it to skew anyone's because I'm not 100% sure, but I did have the opportunity to have dinner with Franklin Cardy, and I think he alluded that they did get a seed student or 2. But again, I don't want that to skew your deliberation because I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyone else? Councillor Heenan. Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. It sounds like we're nickel and diming this, but I believe that we give enough to the courthouse and the people that use it. We heat it, etc. And I mean, it's rightfully fair that the people who use it pay to keep it clean. I mean, if we were to use it for an event, we would have to pay to clean it. So I'm for the fact that whoever's making the money from it with the tours, et cetera, or the seed student or something, I just feel that I think they get they're getting enough. I actually realize that the courthouse is representative of the town, but the thing is, it's not going to make or break an organization to pay to clean up a little bit every week. It's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Anyone else? I'll go back to you 1 second. Anyone else? Councillor Hurdle? Other than Councillor Neal?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would tend to agree. I think, again, there's got to be a little bit of an onus on the user group here to help out with the cleaning. And again, just looking at the staff report, I guess my initial thought was that it was, it was a pretty fair suggestion, even if we were to pick up sort of that initial cleaning to get things going, but then they take care of it for the rest of the season.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Anyone else? Councillor Hurtle, I didn't see your Deputy Mayor, actually, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think, as Councillor Heenan said, it is an important asset to the town, and as Councillor Neal suggested, that maybe we pay the initial cleaning for, getting it ready, and then they look after it from then on. I would be all for that.
Thank you. So we've got a proposal for deep cleaning, followed by them. The town covers the deep cleaning, they do the regular after that. Councillor Hurley, I did notice your hand earlier. I just wanted to give others, so go ahead.
Thanks. I just propose that deep clean, yes, but maybe we table the discussion until we know whether or not they have a seed student.
Okay, sounds good. Everyone else is good. So what I'll do is I'll see first of all who would like to pay for the deep cleaning and encourage them to do the cleaning moving forward after for their own use. I'll get consensus on that, and if we don't have enough, the alternative will be the deep cleaning, followed by a follow-up conversation later. So I guess first is who would like to see a deep cleaning, followed by them picking up the bill after that point. Just signify by saying aye. Okay, and those that would like to see it a deep cleaning, just for clarification, a deep cleaning, and then we bring it up later, just a quick show of hands for the remaining bill. Okay, so I think we have consensus that we will take the deep cleaning, Mr. Spear, and then after that, if they want to continue using regular tours, that through their own means, whether it be students or their own staff, to presume it. So thank you, Council, for weighing in on that. At this point, we are switching over to Recreation and Community Services with Councillor Gubishel, and I'll pass it over to you at this point.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reference number PED 220303, submitted by myself. And the subject is bylaw number 22-03, a bylaw to regulate non-vehicular transportation in the town of St. Andrews, first reading. And the background reads, and I'll go quickly. At the regular council meeting on Tuesday, April 19th, 2022, and May 2nd, 2022, council discussed the bylaw 01-5, a bylaw regulating the use of skateboards, scooters, and inline skates within the town of St. Andrews. Council discussed topics for safety for pedestrians and users, youth and adults, active transportation, forms of non-vehicular transportation, and liability regarding the uses of these forms of transportation along Water Street. Council directed staff to bring back a new version of a bylaw that would be reflective of varying types of non-vehicular transportation used in the community, which includes person-powered and electric-powered devices. Staff has reviewed several bylaws from across New Brunswick with a focus on St. John, Fredericton, and Sackville, and the Motor Vehicle Act of the province of New Brunswick. Staff feels the bylaw presented to council encompasses the views and discussion of council. And the action reads, or the motion reads, the council grants leave for first reading of bylaw number 22-03, a bylaw to regulate non-vehicular transportation in the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you. Could I have a mover for that motion? Deputy Mayor Akaji, a seconder for that motion. Councillor Blanchard? Oh, he
Sorry,
did-
I was rubbing my nose.
Okay, I just wanted to say, he didn't say so moved, so I just wanted to make sure. So if you're good with that, then Councillor Gubishel, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. We're now open for discussion. Before you, Council, is a new bylaw. I believe Mr. Knopper looked at other bylaws across the province, which there is a number. The major changes on this would be that it, first of all, provides definitions, which is one thing we heard from Council. The other thing is a lot of other places did have a reference in regards to helmets. And the other major change would be that you could say that inline skates, scooters, and skateboards would be allowed in downtown St. Andrews on the streets, which we've confirmed that there's no legal issue with that. So the bylaw before you would be what we would call perhaps maybe a compromise. But with that being said, we certainly can not go this route. We can just repeal the existing bylaw still. So just to let council know that you do have that option as well still. Is there anything I missed on that, Mr. Knopper? Because it is a new bylaw before council.
No, Your Worship, you've covered virtually all the discussion topics that were brought forward by council during the last two meetings and what was incorporated into this bylaw.
Sounds good. And I do know that there was also the alternative of making it seasonality as well, which we could consider as well. So council, I'll open the floor up to you before we go to a vote on this particular motion. The floor is open. I see Counselor Gumashell, then we'll go Counselor Blanchard.
Sorry to jump in there. Point of order, wouldn't we need to repeal the existing bylaw before we brought forward a new bylaw?
No, what we're essentially doing is changing the bylaw, is that correct? Or Mr. Knopper, should we be repealing the old one at the same time?
Through you, your worship, there's actually a section at the end
At
of
the
the
end of
bylaw that actually talks about repeal provision on page 58 of your document, and it actually states that when this new bylaw, if council moves it forward,
Automatically
would
repeals.
automatically repeal the other bylaw.
Perfect, that's good question, Counselor Gumashell, because I don't think we've seen one like this necessarily that way, but that makes sense.
Your worship, just so council knows, there are several bylaws of the town of St. Andrews that have followed this procedure, including like our water wastewater bylaw. When it was fully redone,
So there's
it was
no-
repeal as soon as it was in place. Very similar would be like our zoning bylaws. As soon as a new one is in place, the other one's
Automatic
repealed.
replaces, perfect, so it's just for no transition period, I guess, for debate, I guess, so, Counselor Gumashell, is that it for you, or? Counselor
Fair enough. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Blanchard.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to town staff for preparing this. I'm generally in support of this as it's written now. I just had a question on the, because it does add, excuse me, helmets as a requirement now. Is that standard for most of the municipalities that you looked at, or is that, I'm just curious to know what the situation was there.
So through you, your worship, under the Motor Vehicle Act of the province of New Brunswick, it actually specifically states cyclists and bicyclists need to be wearing a helmet at all times at all ages. What we've seen with other bylaws, St. John, Sackville of being the most recent, they incorporated it for all their forms of transportation that to ensure safety of their citizens and use on their roads.
Anyone else? Counselor Hurl, then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Akagi.
Just a point of information, Mr. Knopper. So the province's rule would be in place regardless of what we would decide today on this. So we have no power to decide on bicycle helmets.
Through your worship, that's correct. It's actually stipulated right in the motor vehicle bylaw for them. I could look up the exact section for you, but it stipulates that anybody under the age of 16 must be, like parents and guardians, must ensure that a proper CSA-approved helmet is chin-strapped and on. And it actually indicates anybody over the age of 16, regardless of who you are, still needs to be wearing a helmet while cycling.
Thank you.
Perfect. And I'm assuming it's in here because it would give town bylaw enforcement a tool in order to enforce it as well as through provincial law.
That is correct, your
Yeah.
worship.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Akagi.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Thank you, staff, for doing such an intricate revision of this bylaw that we've had quite a bit of discussion on it. And giving us the definitions is wonderful. Like, there is no question as to what is what. And enforcing the helmet law, I think, is a great thing to do because that does give our bylaw enforcement officer the chance to make sure that they are riding safely. It doesn't request that they're wearing all the knee pads and everything else, but at least their head will be protected, which would be a good idea. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you. Any other member of council? Counselor Neal.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Again, thank you to staff for the work on this. I think they did a good job in capturing everything that we have been discussing. I just want to go back a bit to sort of my original reasoning for supporting the repeal of the original bylaw. Originally, my thought process there was, again, listening to the debate we had in the last two meetings, we seem to be focused very much on one group versus the other. And the reason that I was fairly supportive of repealing the original bylaw was, again, because I was hoping we could get to a spot that was more inclusive for everybody. I wasn't comfortable with the focus on kids on skateboards versus senior citizens. I think we should be striving towards something that is more inclusive for everybody and their interests. And this new version, to me, although it's somewhat more restrictive, again, I think it did capture a bit more of what we were trying to do. I do note that bicycles have now been added to this, which, again, I know I asked several questions as to why bicycles weren't added on the original bylaw, and that was by no means me supporting that. I was just trying to get clarification for it. With regards to the helmets, again, I'm a strong proponent of public safety, but at the same time, being that it's already captured under the New Brunswick Motor Vehicle Act, which does come with a fine, which is $21 by the province, it seems again that you could now be hit with a $21 fine by the province and a $50 fine by the town. So I had a little bit of an issue with that. And again, reading through it, you know, I like the fact that we have separated sidewalks from the road, again, allowing use there. We had a fair bit of consultation on this one. We've had letters in support and against allowing these activities on sidewalks. You know, again, a lot of them, when I was reading them, were focused again on the fact that we have now added a skateboard park to me, which, you know, somewhat alleviates the problem of skateboards downtown or the scooters. The other argument I heard was that the sidewalks weren't safe enough for them. I think, again, that, again, alleviates part of the problem. Again, if it's not that comfortable to ride on, I don't think people are going to want to do it. We've also had this recent survey of the Chamber of Commerce, which, again, surprisingly to me, was very much in favor of allowing these activities on the sidewalks. And, you know, against the $50 fine and, you know, in favor of repealing the original bylaw. So, you know, the helmet issue to me, again, I'm all for the public safety, but I also feel that there has to be an onus on, you know, some of the users and their parents for the really younger users. And I'm not sure that this is something as a town that we want to take on. I will note some of those other communities, St. John, Fredericton, they have a lot more infrastructure than we do when it comes to enforcement. I can see this being just a non-stop issue for our bylaw enforcement in town. They could probably literally fill their days up all summer long just chasing kids without helmets on. And the last thing I'll mention, again, looking at the new version that was given to us, my initial thought was that it could basically start, section 2 could basically start at 2.4 in my opinion, if we did away with 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. Again, I think that is a much more inclusive approach. It's something we've talked about. We talked about it at the start of this meeting. It was noted in, you know, our spring newsletter that we are transitioning to new recreation opportunities to be more inclusive of all ages and abilities. And I think that would definitely put us in the right direction. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to try to paraphrase that. So basically what you're proposing is to amend basically amend the bylaw, the motion to omit sections 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so council, I'll give you just a moment to digest that, just because I will be looking for consensus, but quick summary would be that it essentially in 2.1 would allow for these to be on sidewalks. 2.2 would basically remove the helmet restriction, and 2.3 would, at that point, again, a helmet, and it has to do with parents and guardians, correct?
Correct.
So I have Counselor Neal, if I could say, I'm moving to amend the motion with that particular change to the bylaw. I'll be looking for a seconder for Counselor Neal's comments. I've got Counselor Gumashell. Now we can open that up for discussion on Counselor Neal's comments, or of course we can go to the vote. Just on that, is there anyone that would like to have anything to say on Counselor Neal's comments before we go to the vote? Or the amendment, I should say, not so much as comments. Counselor Heenan, then we'll go to Counselor Blanchard.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. As you know, I've taken a little heat on the paper from all of this because, et cetera, of my standpoint on it. When we really get down to thinking and looking at this whole thing, we're talking 4 blocks within the town center. I'm just still concerned. I'm not sure if anyone was downtown the day that we had the buses in with the tour buses from the cruise ship. But in those 4 blocks, it was congested and crowded, and this is in May. So we just have to, as a council, really feel that we're doing correct what our plans are and our motion is on this. I do agree with Councillor Neal that the helmet is not really necessary in this because, as mentioned, it's part of the motor vehicle initiative. So putting it in is redundant as secondly. But I just wanted to point that out, and thank you for allowing me the time.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Blanchard, I believe I saw your hand.
Yes, Your Worship, thanks. I appreciate the Councillor Neal's comments, but I don't actually mind the idea, again, as we talked about a bit of a compromise, I don't mind the idea of keeping skateboards, bicycles, all that kind of stuff off the sidewalks in the downtown historic business district. I'm all about, like, to me, it was always about promoting active transportation. So being able to ride those things downtown to get, you know, and move throughout the downtown, to me, it was always the ultimate goal here. And I certainly do appreciate the survey that came in from the Chamber of Commerce that we received yesterday or today, I can't remember now, which did show a majority of the business owners downtown are actually supportive of repealing the old bylaw. And allowing the means of transportation downtown. But there was a portion also that was opposed to repealing. So I want to recognize that as well. With regards to amending the full amendment to what Councillor Neal has suggested, again, I don't mind. I actually would prefer to keep 2.1, so I'd probably have to vote against the amendment as a whole. I recognize, like I said, the redundancy of the helmet issue. Again, one of my questions I was going to ask originally was actually answered by Councillor Neal. I was wondering what the fine was under the Motor Vehicles Act, and $21 versus our $50. I don't think that necessarily jives up. I'd actually like to see if we are going to have this as part of our bylaws. It does talk about, you know, if you pay the $50 to the town, you can, before charges or before you have to go to court, you can avoid going to court. Well, I'd just like to see us sort of maybe fall closer in line with actually what the provincial fine is. Maybe somewhere around $20 to $25 would make more sense. But I also recognize that it could potentially be a large issue for our town bylaw officer to enforce this effectively. And again, if you can enforce it effectively, then why put it in place? So I do sympathize there, but as a whole, because of the first 2.1, I actually support, I think, that. So as a whole, I think I'd have to probably vote against unless it was amended further. So thanks.
Councillor Blanchard, I think it's okay for us if this does get defeated, if it does, to amend it to leave 2.1 in, and we could do a second amendment if someone wished to omit 2.2 and 2.3.
Like I said, for me, either way, like I said, I'm
everyone's
supportive
aware.
of it as it is right now, but like I said, I'd be open to having that discussion.
We'll isolate those two because they're two different bylaws depending on which ones we omit, which ones we don't. Before I go back to Councillor Neal, is there anyone else that wanted to comment? Otherwise, I will go back to Councillor Neal. Councillor Gumashel, do you have a hand?
Well, sure. I'll comment. This whole thing, I don't think I would have brought it forward, except I thought we had the votes to repeal this in the first place. I apologize. It's not the best look for our community to pit users against each other. Councillor Heenan, based on some of the 4 letters against it that we got after our last meeting, said that, you know, fairly said that he didn't want to feel responsible for things. That's a fair comment. I question some of the letters. I think particularly the one from a former law enforcement here in town. We don't I don't know of any statistics for accidents. I don't think we've had one accident. People talk about, oh, there were accidents and oh, there were this. Well, there's nobody can seem to actually find one. So I think that was a bit misleading, and I really would like to see the whole thing repealed. But thank you to Councillor Neal for coming up with a potential solution, having the leadership to see that if we take out 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3 and just go with 2.4, 2.4.1 says that exercise and due care to the safety of others shall be exercised. So basically, it would save our poor bylaw enforcement officer who has to chase kids off the wharf, off the front street for skateboarding. And people come up to me and, you know, they say, the bylaw enforcement officer chased my kid. And I can't say, well, it's you know, it's against the law. I try to have his back, but I feel for him. It's probably not the most fun having to chase kids around. I will also add, and I mean, I could talk about this all day, growing up on the front street and how, you know, we want to attract people here. We want to be a vibrant town, a community, not, you know, it's not a shopping mall downtown. We don't chase people away. If you go along, you know, some of those blocks, like the McGuires have kids, the Leatherhouse has kids, the Sorensen has kids. They're all of that age to ride scooters and stuff. They should be able to play on the sidewalk and ride scooters and whatnot if there's no people. Like, you know, you teach kids to be civil and to be respectful, and if it is, you know, to have some seniors suggest that we should be chasing kids off the front street, walking three abreast, and some of the comments I saw in the TJ article it's really a bad look for the town. And so I'm sorry to have kind of brought this forward. I certainly didn't think it would take this much of our time. We have many important things to do, but I do feel that it was necessary to speak out for the young people and other users. I mean, the town, we don't have it. We don't even know how many skateboarding tickets we've given, you know, and I've spoken to people who've paid tickets, and we don't have stats on that. So I just would have rather not brought any of this forward, to be honest, and just continued to go along, because I don't think it's a good look for the town. So I certainly don't want to waste anybody's time, and I would support the 2.4 forward as suggested by Councillor Neal, because I think it's a pretty good compromise.
Thank you.
Sorry to be all over the place there, but.
That's okay.
Thank
Any other member of council? I'll go back to Councillor Neal just to make sure. Councillor Neal, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll just take a moment to clarify what I'm thinking about when I'm, you know, suggesting we allow these on the sidewalk. So essentially, in my opinion, what we're looking at here is very young kids. You know, we've taken the time to survey residents and got pretty much a split back of for and against. We've surveyed the business community, which again are in favor of repealing it. But the one group that we haven't talked to is actually the kids. So having kids myself in both the high school and the middle school, I took the opportunity to talk to them and some of their friends. And of the, I'm gonna say about 10 kids I spoke to, none of them were even aware that this bylaw existed. They had no idea about it. Again, it basically came into effect long before any of them could remember. So, again, I think we have to respect a little bit of the fact that the majority of kids that are of that age are going to ride on the roads. It makes far more sense for them to ride on the road than a crowded sidewalk. So really, we're just coming down to, my thinking is that we're just talking about very young kids who are most likely out with their parents. We add bicycles to this. I'm thinking of, you know, the 5-year-old that just got a bike for his birthday and can't ride it down the sidewalk with his parents walking behind him. That is where my thinking was coming when I'm, you know, in favor of allowing this on the sidewalks. I really don't think repealing this bylaw is going to result in gangs of teenagers terrorizing our sidewalks. I just don't see that happening. Again, most of them aren't aware of it, and they're not doing it now. So I really don't see the issue. Again, to me, we're excluding very young kids that don't have the option of riding these things on the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Anyone else? We'll go through one more round, because that was Councillor Neal's second time, so we'll do one more round, then I will call the question, just to keep the meeting moving forward. Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I do like the changes that have been brought forward, but I didn't understand that it was very young children. I was assuming it was all the children that were going to be riding on the sidewalk.
I don't mean to interrupt, but just to be clear on that, 2.1 does not split the age. Anyone can,
everybody.
so it can be
So it
teenagers.
can be
It's not
teenagers.
just young kids, it'll be anyone.
But I like the idea that Councillor Neal has brought forward, that the young children be allowed, because I wouldn't like to see them on the road with the traffic when they got a new bicycle and they're not well balanced. But I still would like to see the teenagers follow the rules of the road and be on the road. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so council, keep in mind, and for the public as well, that this is just first reading. It requires 3 readings. So no matter kind of what you decide on this one, it's going to have a hearing of objections and there's an opportunity to amend. I am hearing a bit of a theme that we can look on maybe for another time, that maybe we look at perhaps looking at an age where young kids can, and if you're an adult, going by, but it's a slippery slope when you get into picking an age there. It's an arbitrary number. So then you get into other things about some kids that need more supervision, whatever the case may be. So I have a mover and a seconder for an amendment which would omit sections 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. So I will call the question. All in favor of the amendment to remove those, please signify by saying aye. And all those opposed? And Councillor Blanchard.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'll vote in favor.
Okay, so by a vote of 4-2, we will go to first reading with sorry, that's 2. Approve the amendment. Now we go back to the original motion. Sorry, Council. Get to do that all over again. Could I have a mover now on this one? All right, Councillor Neal, and seconded by Councillor Gumashell. So this is the motion again, probably very consistent. All in favor of going to first reading, signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Seeing none. Did I see a hand, Councillor Heenan, at the end?
No, I'm fine. I was late.
Okay, sounds good. So that we will go to first reading then. Let me just jump into the bylaw. I got myself ahead there. This is bylaw number 22-03, a bylaw to regulate the use of non-vehicular transportation within the town of St. Andrews. And I'll read it by title. 1 is definitions. 2 is non-vehicle transportation. 3 is administrative penalty. 4 is repeal provision. And that is everything. So it's been read the first time on the 16th day of May 2022. And I know that Mr. Knopper is taking notes there, so he'll make sure that the updated version is available to the public before the hearing of objections, which will bring us to the actual next motion. So back to you, Councillor Gumashell.
The reading of the hearing of objections.
Correct, that's the motion.
Okay, thank you, Worship. The council sets the date of Monday, June 6th at 6:30 at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex for a public hearing of objections to bylaw number 22-03, a bylaw to regulate non-vehicular transportation in the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you. And a seconder for that motion? I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion on the hearing of objections motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody. So the hearing of objections has been set for Monday, June 6, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. at the W.C. O'Neill Arena. All right. Next one is we're moving ahead to planning and economic development. Joining us virtually, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. PED 220302, zoning bylaw Z22-01, third reading. The town of St. Andrews passed the zoning bylaw Z21-01 in March of 2021. Over the past year, staff have been working with the bylaw and identified several changes to enhance the bylaw and encouragement of development in the community. The following processes have been taken regarding zoning bylaw 22-01. 1. Council has had 2 workshops to discuss the proposed changes with staff. 2. First reading of zoning bylaw Z22-01 happened on March the 7th, 2022. 3. Obtain views of the Planning Advisory Committee, March 16th, 2022. 4. Public hearing of objections, April 4th, 2022. And finally, second reading was April the 19th, 2022. Note that the third and final reading can occur by title, as posting notifications have been in place as per Community Planning Act. The motion is that Council grants third and final reading of zoning bylaw Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, and I so move it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. A seconder for that one, Councillor Blanchard. We'll open it up for discussion, and Councillor Hurdle's hand is up.
Thank you, Your Worship. As all of you know, you've heard a lot about me on this, a lot from me on this, not a lot about me, goodness, a lot from me on this issue. And obviously that there's a lot of concern, a lot of comments, a lot of attention being paid to some of the pieces that are coming through on this one. And I've tried my best to hear from all sides on this. And one of the things I do believe is I do believe that, we should be moving towards a parking minimum of one lot. But at the same time, there's a lot of concern from the community. And the concern from the community, from my point of view, is not about parking necessarily. We're using the parking debate to answer a lot of other concerns that we have in our community. And I think that it's our responsibility to address those concerns, but by using the right tool for the job. So while I remain committed to looking at and bringing forward, reducing parking minimums, at the same time, I think that we need to do some protection in our community as well, protecting the aesthetic and the heritage of St. Andrews, which is obviously, why many of us are here and near and dear to all of us and all of our hearts as well. So I want to kind of tease these things apart. So on one hand, I think that the bylaw is largely fine as it is, but I propose, and I know for risk of disappointing people, I propose that we table the movement from 1.25 to 1, and we really look at developing the right tool to answer the concerns that exist in this community, which would be a heritage protection act of some kind, a heritage protection bylaw of some kind that has teeth in it to protect what we're looking to protect in this community, to protect the look and feel of our community, so that we have a mechanism to respond to the concerns that we're hearing in the community. So what I propose is that we would let the bylaw go through as is, except for the reduction in parking from 1.25 to 1, table that for the time being, work on establishing a heritage protection bylaw that can allow us to do what we want, and then bring that parking minimum back to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Hurdle. Just full disclosure of Councillor Hurdle and I actually had a conversation after, and I tend to agree. If you look at it as parking, it really isn't about the parking. It's about when you remove a bylaw, what does it mean to changing your downtown? If you look at that particular zone, there's virtually not a whole lot of opportunity to develop. What you'd be doing is looking at adding another story to an existing building, or you'd be looking at a way for a developer to look at one of our buildings and say it'd be easier to rip it down and put up a tall, thin 3-story building because now I can meet the parking requirement. So really, it's not necessarily, to Councillor Hurdle's point, just about the parking. It's also about, it's been one of the ways that the town has preserved heritage. So just to echo what he said, because he actually opened my eyes, because that was what I was feeling, is he's proposing that we do come back at a later date with the change to 1, but it's when we have the proper heritage protection in place to make sure that we're not making it an easier solution for people to rip down buildings to put up tall, thin buildings. And that's where at the heart of it came, where we found the common ground, I guess you could say. And I'm glad that he started off, because what he said is exactly what I was alluding to. You just said it a lot better. So anyone else have any thoughts on that, or your own thoughts independent, obviously, on the motion before us? Councillor Blanchard.
I think based on what you've said and what Councillor Hurdle has said, I was supportive of reducing it, dropping it down to 1.0 or one parking space per, as opposed to the 1.25. I recognize and certainly support the idea of a heritage bylaw, and I understand what you're saying in that if we made this change now, in the interim, before we have that in place, it potentially opens up the door, and I know there are concerns in the community. So I would support this for now. If, like I said, if we are committed to coming back and making that change to one, then I would be supportive of that moving forward. And again, working through council, but putting that onto our agenda as a priority to do something it's long overdue in this community. A heritage bylaw, I've heard it a number of times before I was elected to council, and I think that's something we should continue to work on. So I would be supportive of that.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. I think you brought up a good point, is I think council, especially the fact that we're having more counselors joining it. I think we do need to label our priorities for the remainder of the year. And I think that Councillor Blanchard, Councillor Hurdle, you're certainly making a strong argument that we should actually look to try to get that done for the community before municipal reform happens, because there's going to be a lot of time concentrating on external issues, just challenges that the province is asking us to figure out, whether we want to or not. Any other member of council? Okay, I will basically at this point then, Councillor Hurdle, just to be clear, you're amending it, basically the motion to go to third reading with changing the parking places in the downtown, what's the proper zone, the downtown, the historic business district, from 1.25 to, you'd like to remain at 1.25. How it's worded as 1 in here, you'd like it to revert back to the original 1.25.
Your worship?
Yes.
Your worship? I had a comment beforehand, before we did this.
Sorry, your hand was up?
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't see it, actually. I don't know if it's blending in with your background or not, but yeah,
It
it
might
is.
have.
I can see it disappear. So if you'd like to go ahead before we get clarification and have an amendment.
I have absolutely no problem with the amendment that's proposed, but I would like to have a date placed on the timing for having the heritage put in place. And we're saying by the end of the year, if we can say that, we can have a date, because I'm really worried that this will all get lost in the shuffle. And I don't think any on council want it to be lost in shuffle. So I would like to see us say that we will have a heritage bylaw in place by October 1 or something like that, so that this can be revisited before the amalgamation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Although I appreciate the comment, unless someone from council sees it differently, I don't think there's a way you can guarantee a date of when that's done, because you need proper consultation, and we don't really fully understand what that heritage bylaw looks like and what the process entails. I'd encourage council not to set a date on such, because really, you want it to go through the public process, right? So, Xander has something you'd like to add? Okay, Xander, go ahead. Mr.
Yeah, I
Gopal?
just wanted to add that, so you can't actually just amend it and go to third reading. That's a substantial change. So you have to, the Community Planning Act will require 21-day notice for a public hearing of objections, and then that public hearing, and then third reading with that change. I know it seems very minor, but it's changing the substance of the bylaw from what was presented at the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. I was not aware of that. I actually myself didn't see that as a major change overall, because it's actually the one thing we had feedback on. It's actually diverting it to what it was. So I thought it was, because it's what it is.
It's just, the Community Planning Act says if what you present at the public hearing is changed substantially, and substantially means, things other than typos, wrong section number, if it's actually changing the substance of it, and in this case, I would say it is,
Okay.
then it does have to go through that process again.
With council support, I would fully take your advice, because the last thing we want to do is pass a bylaw that isn't. So my recommendation to council would be that instead of amending it, that you'd actually be, first, before we go to the vote, would be to probably move to table it, and then we come back with first reading and a hearing of objections. Is that correct, Mr. Gopin?
You don't need to do first reading. It's just the hearing of objections. So
Okay.
you're still at second reading.
Oh,
you're
so
just making
got
it
you.
yeah.
Got you. Okay. Sounds good. So we don't do first and second. We set the hearing of objections, and under a month's time, we could pass third reading at that point.
Yeah. You're basically having a hearing of objections for that amendment.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's not as easy. Basically what we would be doing then tonight is, let's get consensus on it, and then if there is consensus, maybe a mover to, or actually what we need is someone to move to table it, and then we would work on it in the meantime. Is that correct? We just want to table this at this point. We certainly don't want to defeat it. So table is really our only option. I'm just looking for staff. Or can we set the hearing of objections right now?
If you give us maybe a minute and a half, or just look at the dates, I think we could just build a motion on the fly here to set
Okay.
a second hearing of objections.
Perfect. I think everyone caught that on. So just give our team here a minute. They're going to look for a date, and then we'll just probably bring that motion forward.
Your worship, we could do it like the 7th or 8th on a Tuesday or Wednesday, just to get through that 21-day window.
Perfect. So we have a meeting scheduled that day?
No. And the Monday would be our regular council meeting, I'm assuming.
So we couldn't do it at the same time, it's not within the 21 days? So then we'd have to wait another 2 weeks if we don't do it the day after?
Correct.
Well-
What's council's pleasure? Is there something urgent that the 2 weeks, I hate to say it, the 2 weeks is delaying this is gonna hold up, I guess? Like, otherwise, I'd prefer just to do this on a regular meeting night than have everyone come in for a hearing of objections if possible.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just want to ask one question. Mr. Gopin, in regards to the timeline after 21 days, is there a time that would need to be met by the Community Planning Act beyond that, or does it just have to be posted for 21 days and then it can
just
happen
has
after?
to be posted for 21 days, and then you can do third reading right after the public hearing if you want.
Can we post it? Can we post it tonight? Okay, so, council, what's your pleasure? Would you rather meet on this on its own standalone night, or would you rather just hold it for another, at that point, 13 days and do it as part of a regular
For
meeting?
your worship, we think we can stay after it's one number in the bylaw. We can post it probably within half an hour after
Okay.
the meeting.
So
We'll
let's,
stay after.
so just for clarity, that date would be?
The regular meeting of June the 7th. Or 6th, sorry.
Thank you for doing that and accommodating, because by posting that tonight, you stop everybody, including yourselves, from coming in an extra night. So we'll try to get the rest done relatively quickly. All right, council, so what I'll be looking for, I guess, would be to table this motion, and then we bring forward a new motion, is that correct? For the June 6th hearing of objections. Do I have that right? Or can we just simply amend this motion to say, because it's not really the same motion at all? Can we just amend this motion to say set a hearing objections?
Your Worship, you would have to table the original motion anyways, because you
Okay.
have it at first and second or for the tabling of third, so you would have to, or to move it to third, so you would have to table that motion, and you would have to bring up a motion for public hearing of objections.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll table it first before we set the hearing, obviously, in case it passed tonight. So I'll be looking for a mover to table the motion from going to third reading this evening. Councillor Neal, seconder. Councillor Hurdle, discussion on the tabling. All in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that has been tabled. So I'll be looking for a mover to, that deems June 6, 2022 as the public hearing of objections for bylaw number Z21-01. And that would be with the changes proposing 1.25 parking spots versus 1. Do I have a mover on that particular motion for the hearing? Deputy Mayor Akaji, a seconder. Councillor Neal, discussion on that motion.
Sorry, Worship, to be clear, earlier in the meeting, we set 6:30 for the hearing of objections about the skateboard bylaw. So are we able to move this to 6 o'clock? I know there'll be some challenges for some people.
Doable for you. Yeah. You absolutely could, yeah. All right, so, yeah, we'll set it for, I guess the time's important, 6 PM. Okay, so sorry, I had a mover, seconder, all in favor of setting that motion and approving it, please signify by saying aye. That has been carried. Thank you, council. I did expect those two motions to take the longest tonight, but I'm glad that we're able to work through them. At this point, the other one we're going to bring forward after we go to closed session. So I note that there's nothing under new business. So any questions come in this evening, Mr. Nopper? No rush. Any questions from the audience this evening? All good there. Yep. Perfect. So any comments from any member of council? I know we've had a chance to comment quite a bit tonight, but just making sure. All right, so, Councillor Hurdle, thank you.
Yeah, and I just, thank you very much, Your Worship. I want to just echo Councillor Heenan's point regarding making sure that we bring this back to table as soon as we possibly can. It may not be in our best interest at this point to set a date, but I'd just like to just remind us all that this is important to several of us to bring this back, and so that we keep this in top of mind.
Perfect, good point. And just for council clarification, because we haven't had to do a lot of it, but any motion can come before council with a mover and a seconder. So at any time, if two of you say that we want to bring something forward, it does get brought forward. So that's all it requires. But that's a good reminder, and we'll have it added to our registers as well. So that way it stays as a reminder for us. So at 7:45 p.m., I'll be looking for a mover to go into closed session as per Local Governance Act, Section 68(1)J, which is regarding labor employment matter or including the negotiation of collective agreement. Be looking for mover for that particular motion to go to closed. Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Blanchard. Discussion? All in favor of going to closed session, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. We're in closed session, so we'll get a moment to shut everything down before we begin. Thank you, everyone, for attending.